Rise of Kingdoms is a game all about KvK. I mean, if we're being real, you play the game just to get into Kingsland and just to fight other players. But if you want to do that, you need to know how to prepare for KvK properly. So today, I'll be making an off-season guide. What you should be doing, the tips and tricks and stuff you should be saving during your off-season so that you can be able to, well, fight more or fight better on the open field and overall improve your trades. So if you want to win KvKs more, if you just want to do better in your KvKs for pretty much free and just changing a few things, you want to stick around till the end of the video. Now let's just start off by diving into my almost like a list, but there is no real order here, nothing is more important than the other, they are just things that you should be doing. And the first one is, you should be buying as many transmutation stones as you can. These items are really good just in general compared to the other stuff you can buy with these silver coins, and during your off season to prepare for KvK, you want to get as many of those as possible to transcribe any good armaments you may have that are just not the best yet. So for example, if I had more transmutations here, I would try and transmutate this northern parchment and get more archer stats, or get better archer stats on a piece of equipment such as the one on my Zulang right now. So things like that are important to do during off season, and even just saving those transmutation stones for when you get a few transmutation crystals in your KvK is always really good. So I recommend getting as many transmutation stones as possible, and to do that, of course, you need to do traveling, you need to do dispatching, and recycling the armaments that you don't need. So try and get as many transmutation stones as possible, and I guess work towards these inscription shard chests as well, even though they are not as important. The next tip is something I always tell players to do, and that is spend your daily action points. Spend them all killing barbarians, destroying barbarian forts, mainly killing barbarian forts in the home kingdom, to get yourself as many resources and speed ups as you can. Like I said, killing barbarian forts is the best way to do this. Rallying them with your account and joining other people's rallies will give you very good value, not to mention it's also going to give you free alliance gifts in here, which will give you more action points, more resources, more speed ups and stuff like that, including things such as even boost from the treasure of the crystal. So doing those barbarian forts is really important, and making sure that you are doing usually one troop barbarian forts where you've got your rally and someone else joins it and you do the same thing back. And that's also going to allow you to get more action points, as destroying barbarian forts now gives you action points as you go. So you might get an extra 100 action points, you might get an extra 50, whatever it may be. I also recommend with said action points to, well, save those action points. Do not use the bottles, only use your daily AP. You can use these bottles in KvK, you can use these bottles for Marauder events, or even just doing barbarian forts inside of Lost Kingdom, which are generally considered higher value. So saving your action points is a really good way to prepare for KvK, and AoE barb farming is another way you could spend your action points if you have more time. Generally, AoE barb farming is better value for your action points instead of rallying barbarian forts, but it's way more time consuming and is a bit harder in the home kingdom because sometimes your marchers will kill the barbarians before you can AoE chain them. So I do recommend AoE barb farming if you've got time. I try to just send out even just 2 or 3 marchers with a circle AoE into a group of barbarians, and then I just forget about them and I come back and I've gotten like 3 or 4 barbarian kills. So doing stuff like that will certainly help you in your KvK, and they're just small little things you can do to get more value out of your action points. And of course, like I said before, spending them in the state form as well is probably the most important thing, since armaments will directly affect your trades on the open field. Now, my next tip to prepare yourself for a KvK is to save your materials. I know you might be a bit confused, why would you save materials? I mean, you're just going to make the equipment anyway, and it really comes down to the principle of there may be new equipment added to the game, there may be new stuff added to the game that you can use materials on, and those things just generally are good to have materials on hand for. I wouldn't have mentioned this back in the day before we saw all the new equipment added, but it's certainly possible new things come, such as the refining equipment. Maybe they add more tiers to that, maybe they add a new form of equipment like the leadership. Things like that are certainly possible nowadays, so I recommend with your materials, do hold on to them. But I'm not saying you should just be like willy-nilly with your materials once you enter KvK. I recommend having a plan, something that you want to do with those materials. So for example, if I wasn't a content creator and I didn't make videos, I would be saving all my materials till next season, and I would craft the Dragon Breath helmet, and I would put that on my march, which would give me 2 sets of Dragon Breath gear. That's my current plan at least. And you should have something similar for where you want your equipment to move into for your future KvKs, and have some sort of a goal. Maybe you want to make 2 pieces of equipment, maybe you want to make one like an accessory, which is what I did this KvK, or maybe you just want to continue saving materials or refine some of your equipment, whatever it may be. Stuff like that is always good to know before you enter your KvK, but don't do them in the off season because we have seen more equipment come recently, and also we've seen equipment price changes. We've seen stuff like adding more accessories into the KvK shops. Things like this are small changes that can allow you to get more value over other players who didn't save their materials or missed out on the opportunity. For example, I didn't save when leadership stuff came out, and I'm like half a year late to the party, so that's definitely something that if I saved materials for, I would have been in a better position to craft these pieces of equipment. My next recommendation is to just gather like crazy. You should pretty much always be gathering, and this is something I'm very bad at, but you should always be gathering as many resources as you possibly can, especially if you're running T5. You should focus getting gold. Gold is vital for your marches. You're going to run out of gold pretty much every single time you are in KvK. I almost ran out of gold this time and only run 1 T5 march. So gathering as much gold as you possibly can is important, pretty much the most important thing you can do for your account, and even then you should be gathering resources. And I don't just mean gather everything, especially if you aren't running a single troop type. Know what troop types you are running. So for example, I only run archers, and everyone's like, you've got no food. That's by purpose. I don't need food. Archers only take stone and wood to heal, so I've only ever really gathered stone and wood in my off seasons. I may gather food every now and again for like an objective, but really stone and wood are the 2 resources I always gather, and that is absolutely it. So if you're in the off season, you should know what troops you're running and gather their resources. If I were to tell you which troop is which resource, archers are stone and wood, cavalry are food and I'm pretty sure stone, and then infantry are food and wood. So know your troops, know which ones you're going to need. For example, if you're not running an archer march and you're only running a cav march, and you're only running an infantry march, you want to gather more food than you do wood and stone because they are going to be more important, and gold should be the one resource you put your best gathering march towards inside of something like an alliance motherlode to give you the most resources for your KvK, since pretty much every single troop, especially T5, are going to require a lot of gold. Now the next tip I have is probably the most important tip overall, and it is to save your gold commander sculptures. It is probably the most important thing you can do, just purely because of the fact that if you're not in KvK, you don't need better commanders. Unless you're in an Ark of Osiris or Osiris League and you're absolutely sweating it out in there, you don't need to have all your commanders at an expertise level in the off season, because no one is really engaging in civil wars nowadays. So what I recommend is with any of your gold heads, save them for pretty much the whole entire off season, and just use them at the last dying minute, like before your passport opens, so you can use the commanders that you need. But don't use them if you are in off season or if your KvK fighting is over. So for example, I just expertise to Shobani. Sure, I could probably improve my murderable somehow by maybe removing YSG and putting Nebu in, and it would be an improvement, no doubt about it, and I could spend my gold heads there. But that means if a new archer commander comes around the corner just before I start my KvK, I'm pretty much screwed because I've spent all my gold heads on Nebu and I can't save up or even use this new commander. So saving your gold heads during the off season is really good, and I'm sure a lot of people, for example when Leotura released, would have been probably a bit disappointed because they had just invested in the most recent cavalry, and maybe they were in the off season as well, so they didn't get real value out of their Hauche Bing, for example. So that's just an example, but saving gold heads has never ever hurt anyone, and it's always going to allow you to pretty much use commanders more efficiently and use those gold heads more efficiently. So save those gold heads, think of what you may be using them on before you enter your KvK, and then once your fighting begins, then you use all your gold heads, use all your materials. You probably use the transmutation stones a little bit earlier, and then you've got your murderable kind of set up, and there was no real risk of you losing value because more commanders released, or losing value because new equipment released, because you saved your gold heads, you saved your materials, and then you're set for your KvK because you've got all those things stocked up. The next thing you should do when you're in the off season is consider which troops you are training. I always talk about training troops since pretty much everyone does it, But there is some things you should know when you are training troops in the off-season. First of all, if you know you're about to register for a KvK, I recommend using a 10,000, 20,000 or even a 50,000 reserve depending how far away you are, so that you've got some troops that you've pre-trained up for the pre-KvK events. This pretty much allows you to get all the rewards without using speed ups. So if you're not planning to push really hard in that event, or your kingdom's not planning or wants to stay at a lower rank, you're not going to ruin that because you need to train troops or train extra troops with speed up. So pretty much you can get the bare minimum rewards for free by just paying the resources and waiting for the training to finish. That is one thing that you can do. The other thing you should do when training your troops is consider what is the current meta. Are we looking at a meta of infantry, cavalry, archers? Are they a meta garrison, rally? What are they meta for? So for example, this KvK, the meta was certainly infantry for garrison, archer for rallies. Cavalry were pretty much used in absolutely nothing. And I trained, I want to say not that many cavalry, but I had a fair amount. And you can see I've got way more cavs left than I do infantry. And I mean way more, I've only got 110,000, but still, I've got more cavs left. And that's because, well, I trained too many cavs for a meta that is not really cav dominant, and we should consider I also trained more infantry very recently for an event. So we're going to notice that when you're training your troops, you want to try and preempt where the meta is going or look at the current direct meta. So for example, if right now you are looking to train troops, I'd recommend focusing a little bit more on the cavs, even if you don't run them, just because you're going to be able to kill them easier. Garrison meta is definitely going to be Eleanor once she releases, even though she's not game breaking. She's definitely got a strong use in possibly flags and of course passes, so I could see her as a meta garrison, and with cavalry you're going to be able to kill them off much easier than with infantry, because Ashurbanipal is the current rally meta, so there's always 2 out of the 3 main troop cycles that are in the meta, and 1 is always left out. So I recommend trying to figure out which one it may be. So I reckon in about 3 months' time, we're going to see archers are not going to be the meta anymore, since infantry will become meta rally. And I reckon 6 to 8 months' time from now, archers will be meta garrison, infantry will be meta rally, and cavs will be the out of the meta troops. You need to try and consider that when you are training your troops. That way you can have an easier time killing them off and reaching your minimum dead counts, whatever they may be, or just an easier time helping your kingdom out, because if you've got a ton of cavs and they're rallying only archers into infantry garrisons, your cavs are almost useless unless you're like city rallying or once you're down to your last troops and you guys are desperate to fill flags. So I recommend definitely focusing in a little bit more on the troops that are going to be used a lot more. That is the main thing you should be considering whenever you are preparing to fight on the open field and preparing to help your kingdom. Now, the final recommendation I have for all players in the off-season is to use your speed-ups wisely, and it really comes down to this one thing, and it is training your troops. Once again, training troops is extremely important, and when we're looking at training troops, the best time to do it is during the off-season. Yes, KvK has benefits, but off-season's always the better time, and now that you've decided what troops you need to train, when you train them is important. You've really got 2 options. You can train them during your KvK, during the pre-KvK, and then you get the rewards for that. Or you can do what I did once, and I trained them during the Game of Power. Obviously, this doesn't really help your kingdom, but if you know you can win the event, and the event is not really too high up, I only won for about 3 million points here, and I still trained during the pre-KvK events, train some of your troops now, even if you don't get rank 1 like I did. This is a very, very out of the park example, getting rank 1. Most kingdoms you're not going to get rank 1, but if you get rank 4, 3, even rank 10, you're up 4 extra gold heads compared to everyone else in your kingdom, or pretty much everybody else. So you're pretty much in a better position compared to a lot of people in the game by just training your troops at a better time and choosing to use those speed ups a little bit more wisely. So do consider whenever you train troops to train them during an event that is going to benefit your account. Don't just train them randomly. Don't just set them to train and claim them on a random day. At least claim them when it's going to benefit your kingdom during the pre-KvK, or benefit your account in an event like Game of Power, or even in an event like the Mightiest Governor if you are selected to be in that event, or even if your kingdom is doing a free Mightiest Governor. Train your troops then. That way you can at least benefit your account or benefit your kingdom and overall have a better KvK experience. So now that we made it to the end of today's video, I'm just going to make a very quick statement about what Omniarch said in his most recent video, and it's just about 2 things. I'm not going to object to what he said. He was pretty much right on all fronts. except two things. First of all, I wasn't zeroed. My troops were in a flag, and I only had about 200,000 archers in my city, so I got 200k sevs. That's pretty much how that went down, and I was just chilling in their Kingsland, killing some of their farms. That was pretty much what happened there. So no, I didn't get zeroed, even though it looked very funny and I definitely had a good chuckle at the end of his video. I wasn't zeroed. Unlucky for the people who did want that, and the people who swore me, they would know, but it was definitely a funny skit. And the other thing is, a lot of people were saying I take bribes to make my videos. That wasn't true. If you watched Chappy Gaming's interview, I said I took a bribe to come to 1534, not to make videos. So the king pretty much offered me like 300 million resources, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll come to your kingdom, and that's how that went down. I don't take bribes to make videos. He didn't give me anything to make that video. I made it out of my free will, and I used information that I thought was correct. Obviously, now we know that most of that, or some of that at least, wasn't correct, and I'm not going to say that I was right. I'm not going to try and do that. That's just going to make more drama. So in the end, I didn't take bribes. I wasn't zeroed, and I'm definitely going to end up doing the collab with Omniarch, depending on what it is. Overall, the drama's pretty much been settled. I know I probably just started it up a little bit again, but that is pretty much the end of it, and I'm not going to be discussing it anymore. Now, overall, I do hope you enjoyed today's video, and I just want to say I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.